my knowledge.
That's what you
Not
are
to
aware
my
of?
knowledge either.
And I just have one question about one specific item. If the scope of services, if you look at item 1, I really don't understand the first sentence. Identifying and purchasing the appropriate data sets from Air Sage is a critical first step. So what is Air Sage, and what do we purchase, or
Air Sage is the actual data provider. They have exclusive contracts with cellular services, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, I believe, and these cell phone carriers provide GPS data to anybody who wants it, basically, and it's all anonymous. We don't know who the individual is, but when you combine that information with census data, and you can sort by demographics and things like that, the travel patterns of the community. You get a good snapshot. And so that first step, it gets a little confusing. The pricing that Air Sage has is based on how many zones you have. So you basically draw boundaries, and Air Sage runs a query on their data based on those boundaries. And RS&H has done these types of studies before and has worked with Air Sage. So we feel like we need their help in drawing those boundaries, because the number of boundaries that you draw significantly changes the cost of the Air Sage data. If you have 700 boundaries, it's going to be way more expensive than 200 boundaries.
Right.
And there's some areas in Chatham County and the surrounding area that don't have any population, don't have any employees, and so RS&H can extract those zones, because we don't need that data, because nobody's traveling to and from those zones. So that's really that first step, is they're going to make it more cost effective, looking at the different zones, what we actually need. And so we don't think that we have the capacity internally to do all of that, and so that's why they added that step in the scope.
And the last question I had was, if we look under compensation, it makes reference to cost estimates. So is it possible that this may cost us less than what we're approving today?
I think that is possible, because RS&H will be working with Air Sage on this. There's always a chance that it could be higher or lower, but they know our budget, and I've made it clear that if you can keep the cost below that would be great. But they have experience with Air Sage, and they've already been in discussions with them. So we like the number that they gave us, but it can conceivably come in a little bit lower, or hopefully not higher.
And we have a contingency built into this action item, Mr. Broker, that it would not exceed 132. So there's a 10% contingency.
Okay.
And with the new procurement policy change, if it goes over the 120, we will bring that report back to the board and ask you to approve that change order.
Okay.
So you'll be made aware of the increase in the total price.
So it could go as high as 132, but it won't go any higher than that?
RS&H is estimating 130 for the highest, but until you get into the data and see about the volume and the number of hours it takes to complete, we use the term estimate, because you're just not sure.
Okay. Thank you.
I think Bill asked most of the questions I was going to ask, and I want to just make sure when we're talking about the origin and destination. So this is going to go out into Port Wentworth and out into Rincon and West Chatham County. So as we begin to think about the park and rides and expanding service out there,
Yes, sir.
we'll know where these people come and go to.
Yes, sir.
Because I really think when we do this, we're going to find that a lot of those people are not going to be able to use this transit center. They're going to be veering off down towards the hospitals and down 516. So we'll pick that up.
Yeah, and how they usually do it is, as you get closer to the urban core, the zones get much smaller. But on the outlying areas, you usually get a larger geographical zone, so you can pick up outlying areas, and that could be good for park and ride locations.
And then the last question is, we're really sure that we have the extra money in the budget to fund this?
Yes, sir.
We're not just
there were cost savings on the benefit renewal quotes that more than cover this cost that came up after we adopted the budget.
So it won't be all fuel savings?
No,
It's
it
a
will
real
not.
bus.
Yes, the fuel was adjusted to a more current budget rate, and the savings that are being earmarked to cover this cost are straight from the positive benefit renewals.
So we already have the savings in our pocket?
Yes.
Good.
Budget-wise.
Bill. Bill, Priscilla's
Yeah,
next.
he asked my question about the cost savings.
Oh, he did. Bill?
Okay, I was gonna follow up to something Bill was saying, and this may not be answerable, but, Grant, is the data on this going to be sophisticated enough, since this is the first time we've done this, that it could give us information for what we need to do next year in terms of routing, but could also predict trends of what we might need to be planning to do 2 years, 5 years? I mean, is there gonna be that level of understanding from it?
Yeah, basically when we work with AirSage and RS&H, we tell them the zones, but we also tell them the time frame. So what we're gonna do is we're probably gonna sample a 1 month period for each season. So we'll do a winter, a spring, summer, and a fall. And that will allow us to see some sort of variation where, like, if there are trends in travel patterns, especially being a tourist community, that I expect to see some fluctuation there. But probably most importantly, to your point, this also gives us, once we have these zones and we really like them, it'll actually be a lot easier to go back and replicate this in the future if we want to do just a random sample for a month, and see if anything has changed since the last time we did the study. But it really gives us the framework to save some money on this in the future if we really like the data that we get.
Okay, so we could conceivably actually be suggesting, from this data, seasonal routes
Correct.
annually.
If we
And then
see
I
a
suppose-
pattern,
Come down and
yes.
analyze.
And then the other thing
To
that
a
I was
different
thinking
level.
about is it going to start at least giving us some sense of trending for population shifts, the way the population in the community is shifting to the west side, for instance.
Well, I think when you combine it with the census data that we have, that's where we're gonna see the real value of this study. I mean, AirSage isn't gonna give us population figures, they project population based on census. And obviously the census every 10 years, but they have the American Community Study, which they do every 3 to 5 years. So that's really the data that they use, is in conjunction with what's already available.
Thank you.
Okay, James? When we redid our site on Gwinnett Street, are you familiar with that communication center in there?
Yes.
Okay. With this, that what you have here presented to us, how's that gonna be connected with that, with the money that we spent over there collecting all that data that we did over there?
Maybe I'm not familiar with the data that was collected.
Well, over on Gwinnett Street, there's a communication center. And when we did a walkthrough, we was given what all it does in there. Tracking our buses,
Okay.
telling us
Yeah.
where it's at, what it's doing.
Mhm.
With what you're asking us to do here versus that center over there, how this is gonna be attached to that?
Well, I don't know, Curtis, did you?
Yeah, so the tracking of the buses and the data provided for that is not equal to what we're looking at for the origin destination study. For example, we have those routes already set. So we create our schedule, we plan it out, and we send the buses on their routes every day, and we track all of that. But this study will tell us if these routes are going where they need to go to pick up the people that we wanna pick up. So if populations have shifted.
What that does over there on Gwinnett?
The GPS,
It doesn't tell us
the
where to
CADD
go?
also submit, no, it tells us where our buses are.
Be quiet, yeah, please.
It's current.
It tells us
I'm
where our
trying to
buses
help.
are,
Mhm.
if they're running on time or not.
Mhm.
We can track, traffic problems, we can track, weather, we can track all the stuff
Okay.
related to performing the
So
route.
with this study, would that be attached to that? or would that be anything connected with it?
Well, I think we can use all the data that we have. If there's certain routes that are constantly behind schedule, we can then look at the big takeaways from this origin destination study to maybe tweak a route that serves the community better and takes into account the fact that we're having a delay on certain routes currently. But it doesn't. The vehicle locator system, if we were to change any of the routes based on the origin destination study, we would feed that information to our existing communication system, which then we'd be able to track the buses on the new route. It's a seamless transition.
See, I ain't that big CEO when it comes to technology, but I wanna know some questions, cause we spent quite a bit of money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's true.
And I just wanna know how it's gonna be connected with this.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was talking about.
That was a good question.
Predicting the future.
There's a lot of money that's been spent.
Okay, how did we come to this company? Did we have, information that came from other companies and it was decided what they had and the cost factors that were, similar, or what is the difference?
They're under contract with us right now, so we use them for studies and analysis. So since we're already under contract with them, we went to use them instead of trying to find a new company. When we did on-call professional services, RFP, they were awarded that part of the contract of quality analysis and planning. So when we need a study done, we reach out to them because we already approved them instead of shopping it around.
Okay, and in the future too, you had that originally, did we look on a wider basis to see for what originally was done with them?
No.
In other words, did we go out and like checking with one of the national associations and to see who they recommend the information about, like Hills?
Sure.
On that.
AirSage is the only company that provides the data, and RSNH has worked with AirSage before, and we have a contract with RSNH, so it was a natural progression to offer them this business since we already have under contract.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Okay, need a motion on the floor.
Second.
Have a motion on the floor for the issuance of this task order. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, ferry dock replacement contract award.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff request board approve the award of the contract to remove and replace the City Hall floating dock to Myrick Marine Contracting Corporation. The City Hall dock is used by Cat's Ferry Service. It's in desperate need of replacement. It has been repaired before, but it continues to deteriorate, and the dock needs to be replaced. Myrick Marine was the winning bid on this contract, and federal FTA grant assistance is going to provide 80% of this cost, which is $299,342. And the 20% local match of $74,835 is to be provided by the Trade Center Authority.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, on the floor, a motion is made. Is this, you're convinced that we will get this 20% from the Trade Center? They have agreed to that?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, on May 11th, 2016, at the Trade Center board meeting, Ms. Sherry Spinks, who's the general manager, put it forth as an action item stating that the SAMI board agreed to pay 10%, and then the Trade Center would pay the additional 10% for the total 20% match, and their board approved it.
Okay, so it's a done deal. I just don't want us to be hanging with that 20%.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll make the motion for approval then.
Second?
Okay, I want to ask a question on that first. One of these companies, not only do you have, like Thomas and Hutton and Hussey, Yea and Bell.
No, that's a different one, Pete.
Let me see.
You didn't take a vote yet.
Oh, okay, I'm on, the ferry dock.
Right.
Yeah, we gotta vote on this one first.
Yes.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Number 3, on-call professional services award. Now, in that, I see that we've got 4 different companies that has put in, the bids on it, and all of the general information. But in that, where you have project management, in other words, Thomas and Hutton, or whatever the couple of companies that we pick on that, why are we giving the project management to one of them? Because they're the one that's giving us the information. And in that, because that sounds like it's a conflict, in that situation, to have that project management.
Okay, sure. Terry's procurement team put this together, and I can talk to it, but I'm sure you can get more information.
Right, so basically on the project management side, the evaluation committee looked at our internal resources, and with the addition of our senior planner and our service planner and the CDO, who has quite a bit of large project management experience from his previous jobs, the evaluation committee felt like over the next 3 to 5 years, project management could be handled by internal staff. So we didn't recommend, the evaluation committee did not recommend a project manager vendor. Thomas and Hutton and Hussey Gay Bell both have project managers on staff, but we would only use one or the other if we didn't have the expertise in-house. We don't anticipate having that need over the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, those 2 companies are outstanding. They've done really good work in our community, those 2 that you just mentioned. But still, the thing with project management, it should not be somebody, it's in here, it says include project management, but that's a conflict. I feel that maybe that's a conflict for them, because they are approving their own work.
If we were to give a task order to Hussey Gay Bell, for example, and we didn't have the expertise to manage that project, we would not have them manage their own project. We would have Thomas and Hutton manage Hussey Gay Bell's project, so they would never manage their own project if we needed to farm out the actual project management. But our expertise on our staff level has grown tremendously compared to what it used to be, so we don't need somebody to manage a passenger amenities project and things like that, because we have the expertise now in-house to do that. And actually, that was brought up, I believe, about a year ago. Somebody had asked at some point, are we going to start managing our own projects? And so a lot of the projects that we foresee in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be able to self-manage those projects. If it goes outside of that expertise that we have, then we would not assign the project manager to the same company that's doing the task order for the project.
That's
so there'll
what
be no
you would
conflict
do.
of interest.
Then you would pass it on?
No. So, for example, if Hussey Gay Bell were to do the A&E, environmental study, and all this sort of stuff, we wouldn't give them the project management task order. We would give that to Thomas and Hutton. Both companies are quite capable of managing projects. We would just not let them manage their own project.
Okay, all I'm saying is, if the same company, say you've got it in here, and include project management, so you're awarding it to Thomas and Hutton and Hussey Gay Bell, that's what you are advising us right now. But the only thing I'm saying is that project management, one of those companies that's doing the work, and both of them are outstanding, they are really good, that the one that has the particular one that they're doing, for example, if it's Thomas and Hutton, then, and do we have, let me say this, do we have anybody on our staff that has got that much knowledge about project management, even though we're talking about that at this particular point, because project management can save us money, possibly save us money, but if it's one of these 2 companies and they handling it, what is said in the contract that we want the other company suppose it's Thomas and Hutton, maybe we want Huss and Gay, you know, to do the other part.
Right. We issue all the task orders, so whatever we give out to them is fully in our control. So we don't give a whole project to them and then they decide what they're gonna do. We would task order specifically what we want them to do that we can't do ourselves. Whether it's the environmental study, the project management, whatever, we would farm that out to them and issue a task order specifically for what we want. If it's like I said, if it's a project of a certain scale that we cannot handle in-house, then we would not assign the project management to the same company that's also doing the work on the study.
That's what
Right. We would
that's
give
what
it
my
we would
concern,
give
you can do it to
different
the other
Yes,
company
sir.
who has all that
Yes, sir.
experience.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the majority of the projects we foresee in the next 3 to 5 years, we don't foresee massive projects where we would require a lot of project management. So, and if we do, if something happens in the next 3 to 5 years that we didn't foresee that we would require that, then we also have them to call upon. But they would not be managing their own projects.
Okay. Any other questions? Wayne?
I just had a quick question. Why are we going with a bifurcated kind of a deal here, and we're engaging both of the top 2 proposers rather than going with one proposer?
Well, for the reason I just said,
Okay.
number one, and number two, they both do excellent work, and so their scores are pretty much even, and so we felt it would be in our best interest to have both of them available.
Okay.
And again, everything is contingent upon what we issue as task order, so we're in full control.
So will any task order come back to the board to be approved?
Task orders go to the board, yes, sir.
Bill?
Is there any cost to them being on call?
No, not unless we issue task orders.
So this,
County does the same thing.
Yeah. It's almost like an approved vendor list or something?
Correct.
It basically allows them to be on call, so we don't have to go through the 8 to 12 week procurement process.
Right.
If a project comes up, we're able to move forward on the initial part of it without waiting that 8 to 12 weeks to get started.
And you've answered that question, you know. Any other question? Bill?
So price isn't really an issue at this juncture when we're simply looking at people's qualifications to do the work.
Correct.
To be on call for this.
Yeah, with this nature of procurement, the FTA recommends that you do a 2-step process where the evaluation committee only considers the most qualified and the ones that would provide the best service.
Right.
And then the price is negotiated through the task order process.
Okay.
Who heads up our procurement staff?
Sorry?
Who heads it up?
The procurement
Who's
staff?
the point person, right?
That would be Ms. Harrison.
It falls under my department.
You're the point person in that.
Actually,
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
who's on your staff? Who normally
I have
be at the table when you're making these decisions?
I have a new procurement manager who's been on staff since June, and then also a procurement specialist who has been with CAP for
And these
over 5 years.
Are they present?
John Porter,
You are the,
I'm the procurement manager.
okay. And who else?
Patricia Hawkins is our procurement specialist, and they both are present through the evaluation process but do not participate.
That was the next question.
They're
So they
there
do
to,
the-
they're there to answer any technical questions about the procurement and to make sure that the evaluation committee understands their charge, but they have no input into the results.
Okay.
So for each procurement, we select a team of 3 to 5 staff members, the ones with the most exposure to the type of project. They sit on the evaluation committee, and my procurement staff oversees to make sure that we follow the FTA and our procurement policies.
Okay, now the reason why I asked that is because I want to get more clarity on all procurement and contract work that goes out on the CAT, and I think I mentioned it to you.
Yes, sir.
I'm going back to last year
Mm-hmm.
when I asked to bring our mechanical manager and give us an update on what's happening because we was having problems with our buses, and I keep hearing that on the table. But see, that director never came before us.
Mm-hmm.
Never gave us an update.
Right?
Yes, sir.
I want us to hear from these people who directly making decisions.
Okay.
Okay?
We can do that.
Okay.
So James, you wanna, make a thing for us to hold up on it, you know, for what you're asking, or just, go beyond that and then ask the questions after we approve it?
If we actually delayed, didn't delay it for how long?
A month.
Well, whatever, you know, you are asking this question, and we wanna be fair, because I see that, and a lot of times we got staff people can do a really good job, you know, and things like that. But sometimes if you got something that, maybe goes beyond that, is that somebody on the board should maybe, be at least one of these people.
Okay, okay.
And Coach Holmes, let me understand. So during this process, my procurement staff writes a formal recommendation that comes to me for review, and that recommendation goes to Curtis for his approval. So the board report is kind of the history of that. So what would you want to see in the future? Would you want to see those documents, or would you want
The
those?
documents, and I notice you have here how the finding and the evaluation of it.
Right.
You have the results.
Yes,
Okay.
and then the detail for each
The details are after
evaluator is
that.
listed on how they scored each one of the evaluation criteria. And the report walks through the process. So, I'm trying to understand exactly what would we do differently that would meet your request now. And
So all of this show where everybody did got their grading in each category.
yes, sir.
30, 20, 20, 10, 10.
For each firm that submitted a proposal, the individual evaluator scores are presented here.
Going forward, if this is awarded, we still have control.
Absolutely. We have full control for task order, and the board approves those task orders.
This award only awards, potential future projects. And we would come to the board just like we did with the O&D study. It would be task order 2017-01 for this vendor, for this purpose, for this amount, and you would, be
Approve
able
or
to approve or give another recommendation.
But James, go ahead, you got more.
I think I'm kind of clarify my thoughts about this as I was looking along. Did we hold this up before we put it out? Looking at the time frame that had been awarded, which was in 12, and we issued it in 16.
Actually, this is a rebid. So we asked for an on-call professional RFP in 2012. We issued the 5 contracts that we've discussed in the previous board meetings, but those have run their term. The FTA recommends re-evaluating and renegotiating all of your contracts every 3 to 5 years. And we are past the 3.5 to 4 year mark on our on-call professionals. So we're following FTA recommendations and rebidding our contracts.
James, now do you wanna hold us up like for 30 days? I mean, so, that you have all of the questions?
Not unless out of bold field. That, you know,
What you're talking about is a motion to table would require a motion, a second, and no debate, you just vote, but it would require a motion and a second to table.
What do you wanna do, James?
If we motion it to be delayed, then, because I didn't get my answers. My answers were given to me.
He said he has the answers to most of his questions.
Okay, all right, then we'll go through. We have a motion on the floor and a second to approve this. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. And let's make sure, Curtis, you know, in the future, when a board member requests that we follow through on that, so that it can be answered to the board member.
Yes, sir.
Okay? All right, thank you. Next item, the public officials and P&I insurance renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff requesting board approval to bind coverage based on the renewal proposed and provided by Seacrest Partners for the public officials liability and protection and indemnity programs for the 2016-2017 policy period. CAT has received renewal proposals from our broker, and we're looking to renew them. If you look at the table below, the cost did not change.
Any question? Wayne?
I just had a question. What's the difference between like this insurance, the public officials liability insurance, and like directors and officers insurance? Or is it the same thing, just under different?
Basically the same.
It's the same, it's just called something different.
Okay.
And just for clarification, P&I, protection indemnity, is your insurance on the ferries.
On what?
Ferries. It's maritime insurance.
Yeah.
The last three listed are all insurance related to our ferry boats, and they expire a little off cycle. So they renew each August instead of in May or July.
Move to approve.
Any other questions?
Second, I think it's good it didn't jump up.
Right.
Yes, that is good.
Yeah.
Okay, have a motion on the floor and a second for item 4, public officials and P&I insurance. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Item, the next is presentations. Curtis?
We don't have any presentations.
No presentations. Okay, item 5, the executive director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the month of June, we were 246,185 passenger ridership compared to 260,475.
You wanna tell us where you are?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the next report on tab 7.
Okay.
So we ended the year at our complaints were almost in half for the year, cut in half. Our preventable accidents were flat, and our passengers per hour were flat. And then on the paratransit side, we cut the complaints almost in half compared to last year. Our preventable accidents were up slightly, and our passengers per hour actually was up compared to last year. And our employee injuries with lost time was slightly up compared to last year. On the second page, based on our targets, the board asked if our targets fell within, last month asked if it fell within the range from similar properties our size, and the answer is yes, except for one, the mean distance between vehicle failures. Our goal was greater than or equal to 12,000 miles between failures, which is actually a lot higher than similar agencies, so we hold ourselves to a higher standard. We found that it was 7,000 to 10,000 with other agencies, so that may be the one we adjust, but the other ones were relatively in within the range, and we can certainly look at these each year and decide if we're going to adjust them. Attached to this report is in tab 9 or 8 and 9 is the state and federal legislative reports.
But before we go to that, can
Oh,
I just
yes.
ask you one question back on this on-time performance
Yes, sir.
scenario? You know, we always seem to lag on this. And, you know, and I know it's a tough nut to crack, but, you know, is there anything that we've got in place now that we're doing we're doing better than we used to, but we're still not up to what we
Sure.
identify as our standards?
Sure. I mean, the key is to always improve. So I believe before I came here, it was in the 60s, 50s and 60s, and then early last year, it was in the 70s, and then now we're in the 80s. And so we're always looking at ways to improve, and a lot of it has contingent upon how our routes are designed. And so, and Jorge and Grant are looking at that for the next cycle of service changes. So if we can modify our routes slightly here and there to improve our on-time performance.
Right.
But it also has to do with the fact that a large number of our customers pay cash, so that slows down the buses. And so moving them over a period of time into using passes and even smart cards would benefit that as well. And
Right.
so we've grown in that. As you see, the performance has continued to improve.
Okay.
So as long as we keep improving, that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our goal is 90, so it's a fairly high standard,
Yeah.
but we hope to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working towards that goal. And I mean, from 50s and 60s to 80s, I mean, you're right. It doesn't change overnight. That's
Right,
something
right,
that you change
right.
over time.
And I appreciate the fact that, you know, that it is improving and that kind of thing. But you know, we have a standard of 90%, and
Yes, sir.
it seems like we just can't. You know, we're doing so well on the other things.
Yes, sir.
We just can't seem to get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
But yeah.
Whole bus is part of the issue?
Buses breaking down doesn't help, as you know. Sure. There's a lot of factors. I would see an improvement just based on the fact that when we get our new fleet starts coming in, you'll see an improvement just based on that.
Okay.
Wayne?
I wanted to ask you a question about technological advances. Are we still looking at things like signal preemption and some of those type?
Those are definitely on our looking ahead list. Yes, it's getting to the table with the city and try to form a partnership where we can tap into that. But yeah, that's definitely on the horizon. We would like to have that. And so as people come into town in the morning, the green lights coming into town are longer, and then when they leave, they're longer leaving. And so it hurts us when we're trying to come in the opposite direction. But yeah, and there's a lot of technology out there. It all costs money, obviously. But at least the prioritization is already in place as far as the equipment-wise on the signals, because the emergency services use them.
Right.
So we would just need to worry about equipment on those vehicles.
Right. So have we begun the conversation with the city?
We have not. We had a conversation with a vendor that provides that technology, and so moving forward, we need to look at having the conversation with the city.
I would wait several months.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
So we will do that.
The second thing I was going to ask is, and Mike alluded to it in his report, about the meeting with the airport authority.
Yes, sir.
Were there any?
Our staff met with the airport. First I met with Greg Kelly, and we discussed that a partnership with the airport and CAT is very important, and we both agreed. And so we decided to get together with his staff and our staff, and we had lunch together and basically got to know each other. And so we each gave presentations, and so now that we're all on the same page, it's easier to now put a name with a face, and so the relationship will be a little stronger. And they want to work with us, and we want to work with them. And so whether it's where the bus stop placements in the airport are located, or where our vehicles located, or how we advertise, or and what a good note is that when we were there, he had bragged about the fact that he walked up to his own employees at the information desk and asked if they knew anything about the Chatham Area Transit Airport Express, and they actually did, and they gave him the information, and so he was pleased to see that they knew that. And so it's all within a good partnership.
So was this just about building the relationship rather than making specific asks for?
This was about building the relationship, because I've always learned you don't ask for things unless you establish some kind of relationship.
You got a foundation.
Yeah, and so I think it's important. We're all trying to provide transportation options for the Chatham County, and the better the experience, it improves our tourism and everything. And so he has just as much of a stake as we do. And so by working together, we can all get to the same result.
Well, just to keep it on the radar screen, once you get down to making the specific ask, if we could keep that waiving the fees for the accessible taxis to go through at the airport, just not to forget it.
Yes, sir.
So,
Just as a follow-up to what Wayne was saying, and I believe you reported at the committee meeting that there was actually some discussion about sort of some physical changes that were gonna be made at the airport.
Yes, sir. So, we were looking to put a bus stop in and a shelter area, and Greg wasn't aware of it at his level, and so now that we have this partnership, that he would be aware, he would ensure that the area, the proper area is what we need, and
Right.
and also the type of shelter that's put there is something that he would like to see, because he would like to see the same quality as everything else that they do at the airport, and so he would just like to be in on that and help assist us with that. So it's just working together instead of autonomously and
Right,
silos,
right.
and so.
So
that's
is there a
the whole-
plan to build a shelter now?
There's not a specific plan to build a shelter right
Uh-huh.
now, but we now are in the stage where we have a partnership. We can start looking at options and what we want to do. We also talked about the Airport Express, how we might modify that somewhat to could be comparable to flight banks that come in and out of the airport as far as the times we arrive there.
Right.
Is also what areas around there that we would service with the Express as opposed to just the airport.
Mhm.
So looking at the hotels and whatever. So more minds thinking about it, the better. And since they have like I said, they have a stake and we have a stake, so working together is positive.
So who's the point person for us on that?
Um,
Who's carrying on that? Who's responsible for making that conversation continue and grow?
Be Ms. Grant and Mr. Dumas.
Okay.
And Jorge. So any of the route planning and the shelters, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
One other thing on that too is if you got off, if you when you came into town and the particular arrivals are there, you've got a few of the taxi drivers, and what they were doing, instead of they would quickly go to people that would come in on arrival and looking for transportation, and kind of lead them away from our bus system, our transportation. And so that conversation was brought up. I brought that up because that's really important, that they can't have anybody that works for a taxi company decide who was going to, go first, whether it's the taxi service, and not even get the bus service involved in it. And so that's supposed to change now also.
Hey,
James?
Curtis, I don't wanna get off the script of what we do and how we do it here at our board meeting and you carry, but, when you see on-time performance and quality and all of that, and we have employees being seated in our meeting, I hear from Mike, and I hear from Grant, I hear from Terry. We have operators sitting here, and if we're talking about on-time performance, do we have open house to question them and ask them questions? How could we get them more inclusive into our meeting? If they're here in the board meeting, how could they be more inclusive?
Good question.
Well, you certainly can ask that they, be given questions and can answer them. There's nothing prevents you from doing that. Okay, that's what because we got a team of employees back here. There's a lot of issues hit this table here. We could refer to them.
Exactly.
Sure. And I want them to know, look for me to ask you some questions sometime when something come up. Because, when I always hear from the department head and not hear from somebody else, it may give me a better clarity of what's being discussed. Okay, Curtis?
Sure.
Okay, Terry?
Sure.
Okay. I just want the employees to be more inclusive.
Well, go ahead, Priscilla.
I just want to piggyback on what Commissioner Holmes have just said. That is very important, very key. your employees. And I feel that the employees are part of team transit. I call it team transit because, you know, county commissioners know we are team, you know, Chatham. So team transit. And I'm sure that you ask them questions from time to time, you know, on certain issues. But I cannot agree more that we need more participation with our employees in this particular setting, and for them to feel free to answer any questions that we might have, and to feel free to ask us any questions. And so I'm delighted that we're going to take that position from henceforth so that we can be all inclusive. Okay?
All right, and there's one other thing too, to bring up about participation with the driver's situation, is that quite a number of months ago, we were meeting with the passengers every 2 months, but I changed that to every month. And we've got some people, actually they are the passengers, like the last meeting, they're like ambassadors because they talked about it, and Valerie can tell you that because she takes the notes for me, so that what the passengers bring up, that that can come to Curtis, you know, concerning those particular items that were there in that situation. And they also, it's good, he can speak. We've got a supervisor from CAT, is not, you know, that does the supervision and all. For him to hear what's also being said about if there's a situation in there. We've got good drivers and they do things, but once in a while we have a situation like what David, who is one of the people that come to the meeting quite often, that he was at a bus stop and that driver purposely passed him by. And he was late for a meeting that he had to have. That's what was stated. And Valerie had that information, and also the supervisor, you know, with them. But having the individual drivers like you're talking about, that's good, you know. And so we put it, you know, in here if, you know, some question wants to be asked. If everybody's in agreement with that. Okay, anything else on your report? That's it? Okay, next, unit updates on item 6, and this is for information only. The first one is service delivery update. Curtis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you look at page 2, we have our year-end results. I'm sorry, tab 10. Page 2, we have our year-end results. So our local and express service was down 5.4%. Our paratransit was up 13.1% for the year. You see that Cat Freedom is
way down.
The Cat Freedom is up 68.7%. Water Ferry was up.
I've got this down.
I'm sorry, you're on page 2?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, look at the year-end results, the right column.
Right, okay.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that.
But I'm looking
for
at
the month of June,
percentage.
yes, for the month of June it was down.
Okay, gotcha.
For the year, for the month of June it was down 20%. For the year it's up 68%.
Gotcha.
Okay. Our water ferry was down for the month of June, but overall for the year is up 1.7%. If you remember, about a year ago, Mr. Jimmy Gumby reported that he thought that the year would be under based on the number of conventions, and actually we did come out on top for the year, so that's good news. If you could turn to page. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just backing up and looking at the year-end results, we're still down for all of our modes.
We're not down for paratransit.
Well, I meant.
Water ferry.
Well, I meant the ones in the first box, your
Oh,
local lease.
combined all modes?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So that is of concern to me, that we're down 3.9%.
Yes, ma'am.
Just want to be mindful that that's not where we need to be.
Absolutely. And part of this O&D study that the board approved is going to certainly help you. Yes, sir.
And then to add to Helen's concern, if I read this right, it looks like our ridership is down, but our service hours are up.
Yes, sir.
It seems like an inverse from what we would think should be seeing anyway.
Yes, sir. And we're analyzing that for our service changes coming up. We did reduce the service hours slightly with the 114 Express that the board had concerns for the last 2 years on. And so we will continue to monitor that. But as we discussed before, CAT's been running more service than it probably should, as far as where the service is needs to be looked at as well. I mean.
Yeah, so hopefully the study we're gonna do will help us with this.
Yes, because
Absolutely.
this would have a horrible negative impact on our financials if it's not turned around. I mean, you can't support a system that's running these numbers.
To continue running these numbers. Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
I was looking on page 3, under 2016 ridership for the Abercorn Express. In the second column, is that really supposed to be 0?
For the month, yes, because we didn't run it that month. So there was 0 ridership.
Okay.
But compared to, right, but compared to the previous month, that's why it shows the discrepancy there.
Okay.
Because we had cut that out.
Okay.
We complained about it enough.
Yeah, I know.
To where we.
Kurt got tired of defending it.
Yeah.
Finally gave up.
We, boom, gone.
Is there any other questions?
Okay. Next is system development update for the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff will provide individual updates to share with Ms. Florida Roundtree in marketing and communication.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In addition to the information that's been included in your packet, we are promoting now our semester pass. We're hoping that will increase some of the ridership or the interest for college students. And I'm piggybacking off of what Mr. Dawson said about the Airport Express, and as a result of the meeting that we had, and feedback from Mr. Jones, who actually runs the Airport Express, we are now, and it's only been a week, we're now selling Airport Express passes at the airport. So we're hoping that that would just be more convenient for some of the passengers, instead of them needing change or anything, or not having adequate change, so that they can just actually at the front desk, because that's a result of that partnership. They can now go to the visitors desk and purchase Airport Express passes there. So we're hoping that that will help. Just small baby steps, but we're hoping that that will help just improve some of the ridership on the Airport Express, or just the convenience of it.
Can I interrupt for just 1 second?
Yes, sir.
I did use the airport last week.
You did?
And you do now finally have the placards.
Yes.
At the end of the concourse, where everybody can see them, you have them on all 3 sides.
Yes, yes.
So you
they're
finally
now
got
digital.
that part done.
Yes, great, good.
Pete. Just a quick question. In looking at this report, I noticed that under marketing and communications, your 4th bullet, continuing to promote the summer youth pass
Yes.
in the final year. What does that mean?
Yes, it was a 3-year pilot program. Last year, October, because of our fare change, we now have half fare for youth. And we didn't have that before, so that kind of balances out the need to not really have the summer pass, because the youth can also get the pass for a discounted rate now.
Okay.
So it was just a 3-year pilot program, and this was the final year.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Shalonda, have you had the opportunity yet to check with some other systems to see about their marketing and what has been successful for them? So there's a good possibility that we can use some of the things for marketing, because that's really important.
Yes,
As
sir.
you know, you've taken some extra steps on it, but before, when we had those other companies that were running our system for us, they did a bad job,
Yes,
and we
sir.
just wasted money on it. but now having somebody on our staff like yourself. But anyway, if that has not been done, make sure that we get that information from others, and you can call, on a national basis
Okay.
also.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Helen?
Are we still using a marketing firm?
We have them on call, but we have not used them recently.
I mean, I just haven't heard anything, and,
Right.
attended a meeting this morning, and someone, I said I had this meeting, asked me about our marketing, and I said, I haven't heard anything about it in a while. So, I was just, in light of what you were saying, curious to know if we were using a marketing firm.
We have one on call, yeah, we haven't used them recently.
Yeah, before we get off this, could I ask a question? Are we is Armstrong still on our radar screen?
Yes, sir,
On
they
this?
are. I've actually spoken with them this week. At the end of the last school term, they started their distribution of the survey. They will continue that. School started on Monday, so they will roll that back out to just kind of monitor to see students' interest. So they are working on that, and the survey has gone out.
So they're actually conducting a survey?
Yes, sir.
To determine interest in the utilization of
Absolutely.
some dedicated, CAT service?
Yes.
Is the survey is that all it's about, or is it part of a larger survey?
That's exactly what it's about. Just the utilization, just trying to find out the number of students that are currently riding, those who are interested, and also if they're interested in a UPass program.
Mm-hmm. And how do they do that these days? Do they use
They actually
Survey
have
Monkey or?
Yeah, they didn't use Survey Monkey, but they have electronic as well as they had some student ambassadors who have gone around and set up tables. We will go out there next week just to kind of monitor them and see if we provide any support, but they have started that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, good, I'm glad to hear that.
This might be more of a request from Curtis, but it's under your report.
Yes, sir.
So you talked about meeting with the city's mobility staff about the parking study and how it applies to CAT?
That wasn't on my report.
Somebody did.
I think it was Grant.
I wonder, Curtis, maybe at some point in one of these meetings, you could update us on what this really might mean for us.
Sure.
Because all I know about the city study is they're gonna raise the parking. But I know there's also shuttle, buses, and everything involved.
Yes,
So
sir.
maybe you could bring the board up to date on what this really might
Yes, in
mean
fact,
for us.
we just got a little glimpse of it during the System Development Committee meeting, but we can certainly have a presentation for the board next month and give full details as far as what the city's looking at doing, if that's something that the board would want.
I would like to know what might be coming down the road for us.
Sure.
What it means to us in the way of investments or grants we might need to.
Sure, yeah, we can
Carry on.
certainly arrange that.
And I also noticed in your report, there's a discussion regarding transportation options for homeless individuals. So what is, under planning?
Oh, that's not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're not there
I'm
yet.
sorry, okay. So, what's going on with that?
Yeah, so we've been speaking with Sean Brandon
Uh-huh.
over at the city, and they had an intern this summer who did some data collection, was riding the Dot Express shuttle around downtown, and pretty much inventoried the ridership, noticed that we're transporting a lot of homeless individuals. And they've been working with some of the interest groups in the area on where the homeless shelters are, where the key points are that homeless individuals are traveling between, and they're trying to figure out a way to better serve those individuals. Right now they're using the DOT, and I guess they're starting to think of, is there a more efficient, more effective way of serving them and the tourists that ride the DOT? But we're really just beginning to have those conversations right now.
And the Homeless Authority is part of that discussion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Bill?
Couple of things, just for the record, Howard, there's a great deal more to the parking.
I know there is,
I
but
just
you
feel
don't-
defensive about that, so.
I know there's more to it, but when you read the paper, all you get is.
I know, and yes. I just wanted to say that out loud for the record, there's more to
Right.
it than that. something Grant was just talking about that I wanted to ask about as well. The Bay Street shuttle, the plan to add the additional shuttle service for the Bay Street experiment that we're going to be doing. Have we come to some agreement with the city on that? You had said that y'all were looking at something. Is that a fixed? I mean, is that a done arrangement at this point?
Yeah, it's pretty much a done deal. We've gone over the pricing and the extension of the service hours, and we're changing the route of just a little bit to service Bay Street. Really, the key takeaway is, as you know, the city wants to run the shuttle down Bay Street and extend the hours pretty much all day, Monday through Friday, and get a good frequency on that route. So we did the route this morning to kind of make sure that the vehicles can do it and figure out the timing. Pricing's already been agreed on, so we're really just hammering out the details on that right now.
Any other questions on that? Next, we have the outreach mobility. Valerie?
Good morning. I have a few points in your report. I'd be glad to exchange them if you have any questions. But I would like to allude to what the chairman said earlier about the public meetings. And I do, Mr. Chairman, summarize those meetings, the notes that I take. I do summarize them and send them out to staff members. So those concerns that you have, the people that are addressing those concerns, staff members are aware of them after the meeting. Just wanted to let you know that. Additionally, we'll have a contingency from the Birmingham Transit Authority visit us tomorrow. I think there's 6 members coming in. They are interested in building our Intermodal Center, and they're looking at CAT as a model. So we'll have a few visitors tomorrow from, I think, 9:30 to 1:30.
Oh, good.
Any questions? Well, I could tell you what Valerie, she's been really good in coming to the meetings. What we've had in the past, if, and I invite the board again, to come to one of those monthly meetings. But what has occurred is that what Curtis has done had a number of staff people that come into those meetings and go over things. For example, a change of the routes, or adding different things on there, or what the cost factor might be like when October, when that was going up, so that those ones that came to the meeting could do that. And also now a suggestion on that is to make sure that in the very near future that we put those messages on the buses on the inside, where the people can know that they can come to these monthly meetings and have discussions with us, and especially if they've got, and we've had some good suggestions that Valerie can tell you about some of the services, something about the routes and what have you, and that's really a good thing. So in the future, if you can make that, come to that 6 o'clock meeting that we have once a month. Okay, thank you, Bill.
I'm not there. I wanted to just go back to the planning thing for a moment to just make 2 announcements so that anybody's got this information if they want it. One, the parking matter study, all of that documentation is done. And if anybody wants to get into the details of all of that, you can go to SavannahParkingMatters.com and have hyperlinks to enough documents to create about a 6-inch stack of reading, for however much information you might want about what's going to happen or what's planned over. And this is a 5-year implementation plan. There's a long string of things that have to be put together for that. But SavannahParkingMatters.com has all the documentation for everything that's going to be coming forward on that, at least at this point. The other thing is the Bay Street project. The city is having a forum on what's going to be done, an open house to talk about what's going to be done, get comments and that sort of thing, on Wednesday this week, the 17th. It'll be at the 2nd floor of the Civic Center from 2 to 4 o'clock and from 6 to 8 o'clock. So if anybody wants to learn more about what's happening with the Bay Street project, that's available. Thank
The other thing, Valerie, too, which is really important, the city operates Channel 8 and the county operates Channel 16. So try, if you have something there, to utilize those two channels. I've talked to the city of Savannah on a number of occasions, and they said they'd be glad to assist us, in announcements there, because there are quite a number of people that watch those two channels now, because sometimes real interesting things come on those channels, and you can pick up information both with the city and the county on that. So see about utilizing that. All right, and next we have planning and the legislative portion. Grant started off.
Morning, everyone. Planning staff has been pretty busy over the last month. Just to touch on some of our grants, we've been working with finance to push through some of our grant applications through the federal approval process. Most importantly, our FY16 5307 grant, which has operating assistance, has made it to the next level of approval. So we're thinking that any day now that will get final approval and we'll be able to draw down on that grant. Mike Backer, our state and local lobbyist, is also working with CERTA to get a final date on when we can access the funds for our bus replacement. So we're making some progress.
That's a question about that. I don't understand that. We went to Atlanta and we were told, a month and a half ago that the money was available, and so what's the problem?
That's an interesting point.
I mean, is this an unfunded mandate or something?
No, it's not an unfunded mandate, and the money is there. The problem is that we do not have release from CERTA's attorneys. CERTA's staff does not have release from their attorneys to give go-aheads on ordering vehicles or dispersing the funds yet. I'm a little baffled on what the holdup is. We were told at one point in time, yes, you can order the buses, but wait, let me get back to you with final approval from an attorney. Had a discussion with Chris Tomlinson, the chief of CERTA, and one of his deputies yesterday at a House committee meeting, and they're waiting for word from their attorneys. Apparently there's some I that has not been dotted and T that has not been crossed. I will stress, the money is not at risk. The money is there. And what I've stressed with them, yes, we know that, but the clock is ticking, and we need to go ahead and place these orders. So I'm anticipating we'll hear something within the next days.
Is it likely that this will be available next year as well?
We are thinking very positively that we may see something along these lines next year. There are two study committees that are working. There's one that's working and one that's not.
Right.
The House committee is working. The Senate committee is not. It appears that the terms of debate are going to be how do you marry state funding for local transit to local transit governance, so that the state, if it gives you the dollars, is going to be able to have some say-so in terms of how you spend that. Now that can come through several ways. It could come in many ways, as the federal government does, through rules and regulations. So at least those terms have been defined. This process is moving forward, should wrap up somewhere around late October or early November. Then we should have an idea of what we're looking for in terms of perhaps some funding that would be capital, operating, maintenance. And the one thing that we're stressing through the process is, yes, capital is fine, but we really have to have flexibility to use these dollars for operating and maintenance as well, because we can only buy so many buses. Yeah, we need buses, but at the end of the day, the buses you buy, you've got to operate and maintain them.
Right.
And so and what we're hopeful is that we will get some sort of set aside out of those additional dollars that are collected. And one of the things that was mentioned yesterday is perhaps some of the sales taxes that are collected and that $5 hotel motel tax, which is not constitutionally required to go to roads and bridges. as a possible source for money from the general fund that could come to fund transit around the state. So this is a work in progress. I'm attending and participating in all of those meetings in addition to participating, and Curtis will be participating in this as well, as the transit task force that the Georgia Transportation Alliance has put together. And out of that, we will be coming forward with a legislative agenda which will be very heavy on funding, ongoing funding for transit operations around the state.
Do we have any legislative representation on either of those study committees?
We do not. And the reason that we do not is both of those study committees are termed regional transit study committees focused on what needs to be done in the metro Atlanta area. But whatever happens in the metro area is going to roll out across the state as well.
So scary, but
I can tell you this, when we went up there to get the award information, the governor was making that presentation. What the situation is that I was over there after we talked, they told us about receiving the monies and all of that, and the head of that particular unit, that as soon as, and then the governor went into his office, but I got introduced to the person in charge, right? And what he said about our lobbyists, he says, boy, there's hardly a day that goes by that he isn't checking with me. And he said that our lobbyists is one of the best there are there, especially to get information and to produce things. Yeah.
Thank
you. You're welcome.
Just to wrap up, a few other things on the planning side. We've met with Savannah State University leadership again to discuss a new contract, and probably in the next week or so we should have more details on that. And then last thing I wanted to mention, Jorge and I attended a 2-day workshop in Atlanta last week on managing community mobility. We learned a lot there. It was good to hear from different communities around the nation as to what they're doing to improve local mobility. We heard some innovative ideas about Uber and Lyft, working with them, working with taxi providers, working with bike share, car share, really just everything, and kind of pulling everything together. The big takeaway was that we shouldn't be seeing these different modes of transportation as competition. We should be working with all these different modes to really make mobility better for the community and get people out of their cars and less reliant. And that will, if we're able to effectively do that, then we'll probably see better ridership if we can work with all those different service providers.
Any questions? Any more questions? Okay, thank you. And next item 3 is the financial update. Terry?
Good morning. The financial reports for June month to date and for fiscal year 2016 are included in your package. As the financials stand today, we were $93,000 over expenditures for the month of June, and that placed us at a positive $116,000 for the year. We still have the annual adjustments that are made every year through audit for our transit tax receivable and our pension benefit. And as soon as those numbers are in, the FY16 final number will be final. So we should have that within the next month, and we'll report back to the board in September about the transit tax receivable, which is the one that could swing the numbers quite a bit, depending on the analysis that's done with the county tax office. And other than that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
So if that money doesn't come through, we're in trouble.
The money from the 5307 grant, I would say that our cash requirements have been strained for the past 30 to 45 days, and the only relief is the award of the 5307. And we expect that around the 29th of the month.
Any other questions? Bill?
You mean the award of the grant, or do you mean the receipt of the funds?
The term for FTA in trams is award.
Okay.
It's an annual apportionment that we apply for, and then you walk through the grant application in the software.
Right.
And once it goes through FTA internal review and DOL sign-off, which is the last phase where it is now, the FTA will award it in the software. Then we execute it, and then 48 hours later, we're able to draw those funds to assist with our operating costs.
Okay.
And there's no hint of any problems with it?
There's not. The FTA sent it, just like we asked them to when we informed them of the critical need. There wasn't any kind of pushback from Region 4, so we don't expect there to be any problem in this final phase. It's just waiting the time that it takes for DOL to do their part, and I expect it by the 29th.
Yeah. And isn't this aren't other transit systems in the same boat with respect to this?
The timeline is the same for all transit agencies, and with the team system going down in November and the delay with the new electronic system going up in February, I can imagine that all transit agencies are awaiting the award of their current year apportionments. Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I just had one question. Why's Ms. Dumas getting these big reimbursements? I was looking on the...
Actually, CAT does not have the ability to charge training travel costs. So basically, between Beverly and Curtis and I, we use our credit cards and are reimbursed for the required air charges and lodging and registration charges that the vendors won't take a check for. It's my hope that once our financial situation gets a little bit more stable, we can at least get some kind of CAT card, but it hasn't been the case yet. We're working toward a CAT option, but you'll see reimbursements for Beverly and for Curtis and for I when we have to use the plastic to book travel.
Yeah, I thought it was
for
something like
training.
that, but I'm just curious.
It's all reimbursable, and it's all legitimate travel expenses, but we do reimburse Beverly for the use of her plastic.
More frequent flyer miles.
There you go.
Any other questions?
If you're a frequent flyer, the thing you really want is to be able to fly more.
I was going to ask you a favor, and I apologize to both Curtis and Terry for asking for things which you don't have time to do. But moving forward into this year that we're in, you work with this stuff every day, but we see it maybe once a month and we forget it. I wonder if you could put together for the board a budget book that has not only the numbers but the assumptions behind some of them, so that when we move forward and we start to see things we don't understand, we can refer back to a bound book that we have, and we can see that, you know, this agency revenue is for this. And we'll have a better idea of our philosophy as we went into the
budget year.
Into the budget year.
Yes, sir.
We talk about it, we approve it, we move forward, and then you give us the results.
Yes.
We forget sometimes what's really in the background.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I could do an executive board summary of the initial assumptions.
Exactly.
And then the thoughts on the revenue categories and expenditure categories by department that you could refer back to in any given month in the fiscal year.
For the big ones, like the fuel, you can give us your assumptions in the fuel and some of the other key assumptions that we have in the budget.
Right.
That we can refer back to when we're looking at this on Sunday night.
Yes, I can have that for you next month, Mr. French.
I apologize again, because I know you got an audit going on, you're busy, but.
It's
I think
okay.
we have
The documents are there. It'll just be getting it in a presentation form for the board. We give it to you next month.
Okay, any other questions then? Okay, on the next item 7, old business. Curtis?
No old business.
Well, can I ask a question before we go into that? Yes. So, is there anything going on with the Yeah, that park and ride idea that we had, you know, up on, what is that, Highway 80, out on 95, I know we asked for money from the governor's office for that as well. Is that going anywhere, or is that dead in the water?
If there's not a funding source, it's not.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, under old business.
That was
That was it, man.
Anybody with other old business? Okay, new business. Anybody with new business? Well, this, I guess it can come in between. What I have done concerning the regional transportation district, I've been studying it, and what I've also, and I had talked to Chuck at the end of his presentation, would he be willing to assist us, and he said yes. Well, if you look under this RTD fast tracks, as they say, and one of the things I think is going to help us with the other cities is because the other 6 cities did not want to raise the amount of money to operate our transit system in their areas. In fact, we were a little premature one time. We're passing a resolution that was brought up to us, and we didn't know what had occurred was that none of us didn't know that all of the mayors in those other cities had not been contacted. And so they had gotten together, and they were somewhat irritated with us about pushing that through. And we've heard the information that came from our attorney and others about the funding on that. But going beyond that, what Chuck has done in that, he stated that he'd be more than happy to help. And I think something in here that it talked about the funding for this system and all of that. And I've studied it pretty well, and I've talked to some of the legislators like Ron Stevens, who said he's head of our House of Representatives in charge of that, and that he would be glad to come on board with us to assist us, because what we're going to need is shakers and movers in our community. And then we've got to look, because we can find out from Chuck, is the situation whether how far we're going to expand, because we're in a different situation. They had mountain areas, they were, north, south, east, and west, where they expanded their service. And anyway, with this situation, all of our board members will be involved in it, just to let you know that, with this situation, but putting together a number of things so that we will be able to get those important questions answered so that we can, proceed with it and put all of the ones that we can with the other areas, like the mayors, and request them come to a meeting and let them know the situation so that we start on it. And what I'm going to do is make a contribution to that, starting off at $25,000, for expenses to go into this particular fast tracking and what we can do. And then as talking to some of the people in the community that are quite wealthy, and show, when we have another presentation, if Chuck can come to it, to see about us getting them to contribute monies, because we're going to have it, and especially to start off. But in this here, it shows you the funding now, and I'm sure those other cities, what they will be glad to see about the fast-track funding sources, and it breaks down to about 100%, like sales tax, revenue bonds, certificate of participation, TFIA loans, and others, in there, because that's been really helpful to them to be able to expand to those 33 cities. So anyway, any other thing that you would like to speak about? Anything else? Okay, then we call the meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Pete.
Well,
no, lawyers are here with flex. That was they